And I'm like, well, what do you guys think it is? And they said, I don't know, but things are changing out there. And so it's like the ominous woo. It's one of the chapters in the book is we put the homely in homestead.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Grow Your Grass Off. Today, our special guest is Katie Stout, and she is going to talk to us about epic homestead fails, amongst other things. Katie, take it away, please.
All right. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you all. I love you guys. I've had the blessing of working with you all in various capacities over this past year. It's been awesome. So listen to these guys, people of the internet. They know what they're talking about. So I mean, I have a lot of epic homestead fails. You want a little background on our homestead and kind of
Yes, where you're at. Yes, tell us.
right. So my husband Andrew and I have about 17 acres of very hilly, sandy, rocky, beautiful forested land in central New York State. We're on a little branch of the Little Salmon River that kind of does a little one of those through the property. So we've been working to develop it into basically like a safe haven, a space for people to come and heal. Andrew's a chiropractor, I'm a yoga instructor, and eat good food and meditate and just enjoy nature and learn how to grow stuff. So, my method of doing things usually involves a lot of just throwing something there and watching it to see what happens. That results in some successes and some not in successes.
Some fails.
Some fails, some epic fails. So we've had quite a few of them, but we've had, enough successes to really keep us going and motivate us to keep plugging away at this dream. We've been here for about 4.5 years now. And we started out, Andrew had a chiropractic office he just opened in our local town. And it was like 4 months before COVID shut down everything. And so we unfortunately lost his office. We had put pretty much all our savings into it. And I lost my job. I was laid off from teaching. I was in higher education for, I don't know, about 15 years, climbing the academic ladder. And so, we had time off. We decided to think about what we really wanted to do. And we, tried a few odd jobs here and there. Andrew was landscaping pretty much full time with his buddy, doing traditional landscaping. I was playing with planting things and sheet mulching and doing things like that for my permaculture design certification. Finished that kind of in between teaching gigs before I was laid off. And yeah, so we just thought like let's put our passions together and let's do something. Let's grow edible landscapes. And so here, like, that's where our business is right now. Regenerative Property Management, growrpm.org. And so you can check out what we're doing. But yeah, so I guess one of the things I think a lot of people might be interested in is actually like finding and acquiring land. Is that something that you might be interested in? Okay. So the first epic homestead fail happened, I would say, about 20 years ago. And this was right after I graduated college and I moved out west. I had grown up in the Midwest. I moved out to Utah and I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. So I decided to be a river guide. And So I did river guiding on the Colorado River on their little daily circuit out of Moab. And it was a lot of fun. I waited tables, I bartended, I worked in a bookstore, I did everything. And on the side, I helped a buddy of mine grow food out in the desert and this little plot of land. He was growing vegetables organically. And I thought, how does he do it? You know, like there's no water here. Like he's somehow creating all this food out of like a pile of sand, right? And so I started working with him and learning from him and just like really basic stuff like thinning beets, you know, like you plant a bunch of little beet seeds and you've got to thin them. And it made me really sad. Little seedlings. And he was explaining to me, well, they need room. They need room to grow. And so I cry a little bit and pull them out and you know, but then later on he'd have these like big, beautiful beets, right? But what with organic farming, like the farming that I've worked with over the years, he got me started on this journey. I started organic farming after that, working at different places, but a lot of them don't mulch very much. And so soil just like blows away and it dries out super fast. And in the desert, it just dries out instantly. And so he was just constantly pouring water into his gardens. And, you know, he got lots and lots of food out of it, but he needed a huge source of water. And out in Utah, like you're going to dig, I don't know, hundreds of feet sometimes for like a good well, right? Well, that was not going to stop me. I decided then and there I was going to buy land and be a farmer in the desert.
Good idea.
That was my plan. And I thought, there's no way that this can't work. And so my new hippie community, we all got together and we talked about peace and love and delicious food. And we were so stoked. And I'm like a real go-getter. Like if I say I'm going to do something, you bet your bottom I'm going to go do it. And so I started talking to realtors and looking at land and dragging around my new boyfriend and looking at land and looking at land and looking at land. And so we found a piece that was actually somewhat affordable. It's totally barren, you know, out in the middle of nowhere. It like barely had a road to it. And just like, it's like you see the tumbleweeds blowing across, wind, you know, scouring every surface, and, you know, probably a gunfight over there somewhere. And like, and we had somebody come out and tell us about, you know, well, how much is it going to be to dig a well? And it was like 800 feet, they said minimum to dig to hit water. And they're like, no guarantees. So, but I'm like, let's do it. That sounds awesome. So I got together with all my hippie friends and we were all very committed to purchasing land together. And so I told them, I said, okay, the meeting is this time, this day, this location. I'll see you there. Everybody bring your pens and papers. And I've got, you know, I've got the down payment. I'm willing to put that down. Right. And so we went and my boyfriend showed up because we went together and I came and nobody else did. And that's kind of the first epic homestead fail is that, you know, high emotions do not actually lead to follow through a lot of the time. And so, you know, and the other thing is that high emotions can lead to pretty terrible decisions. So after that, I was a little bit more discerning in finding property. Although the property I have right now has soil issues, but we actually have been actively working on building the soil throughout the time we've been here. And we even applied for and received a Regenerate New York grant. It's a forestry grant from the DEC. And we've been regenerating our forest for the past year and a half, opening up the canopy, protecting hardwood saplings so that more, you know, heavy leaf matter will fall and build up the soil. we're thinning out some beech. The beech just like grow everywhere and they shoot out shoots and they can outcompete basically everything in an understory because they grow really well in the shade. And so we want a diverse ecosystem here. Beech are beautiful trees. It hurts me to take them out, but we're thinning them a lot, opening up the canopy, taking down, dangerous trees, opening up the canopy some more, and thinning out our ferns. And ferns are actually a really great mulch, I found out.
Hmm.
So if you've got like a fern issue, you can weed whack those things and just leave them there, and they break down pretty slowly. They can create, a nice layer of mulch if you're, trying to do some forest gardening.
How does one get a grant like that to do something like that in your forest? You just apply for it?
Yeah, that's pretty much I used to teach English, and so I've done a lot of technical writing.
Okay.
And so one thing to do if you're looking for funding is just start looking on the internet. Just start doing searches. There's private funding, there's public funding. I've had the most luck with, state funding. It's they're typically small enough programs that they're not like hugely competitive. And you can actually talk to the people who are, running the programs and get feedback. So I kept Googling and Googling and Googling and finding different things. And it took years, honestly, to find something
Yeah.
that matched. And I was looking at agroforestry in particular and silviculture, things like that. So the Department of Environmental Conservation popped up with this Regenerate New York, regenerative forestry. I thought, well, this sounds interesting. And I looked at the guidelines. I thought we'd qualify for this. So you always look to make sure like it required 10 contiguous acres of forest.
Okay.
So like you could waste a lot of time applying for something that you're not even eligible for.
Right. Okay.
That would be an epic homestead fail as well, which
For sure.
I may or may not have experience with. So but yeah, and then they said find a cooperating forester. And so I highlighted all the foresters in my region that could have done it, and I just started calling everybody. And one guy called back, and his name is Art Brooks, and he's amazing. And he's like, I'm the only person who will work with you on this grant.
No.
He's like, every other forester is only interested in timber,
Mm.
and because that's where the money's at, is
Mhm.
market for timber and things like that. So we worked together. He came out, helped us develop a forestry plan, gave us all the guidelines and recommendations. We paid him to do that. It was well worth it. And then he ended up helping us get $30,000 to work on our place over a 3-year period. So it was,
Cool.
it's kind of a pain in the butt with reporting and things like that. But like the people that we work with are so nice. Like they're
Worth
so helpful. They want you to succeed.
it.
Like it's cool. And there's actually like a ton of money coming out for that. Like if anybody's listening to this, they're in New York State. I think there's like $15 million that's just been allocated to this program over the next several years. So yeah. So actually I just got hired by my forester to help write one of these grants for one of his clients. So I could
Love
work
it.
for you.
Hit me up.
For our
Oh, wow.
pandemic.
That's cool.
Yeah. So what other fails do you want to hear about? I have a lot. Do you want to hear
Your
some
most recent fail.
most recent fail? This is okay. I'll talk about an ongoing issue.
Okay.
I'll, I'm just gonna preface it with a prayer that my worst fears will not be realized when spring comes. So, rodents.
Mm.
Rodents are a gigantic issue around here. And
Mm.
one of the things that we did, because we love our livestock so much, so we've got 3 goats,
Okay.
Echo, Josie, and Jambo, and we've got about 25 chickens right now.
Wow.
And they're all laying eggs, which is great. Getting a lot of eggs now. sometimes we wouldn't get the eggs because rats got into the barn
Mm.
and made a nice home in there. I haven't seen any for a while, for I don't know, a year maybe. So I think we trapped them all. Um, we're big animal lovers. I'm a huge animal lover. I have a hard time killing anything. Um, I know the value of like raising meat and hunting meat, and the fact like there's pests and they need to be controlled. I don't have the heart for it. Like I've tried, like I've killed chickens and gutted them and cleaned them, and then I try eating them and they just taste like betrayal. Like it's horrible. So I can't do it anymore. And so the same thing went with rodents. Like I got a bunch of live traps, and like I had this big live trap and caught a couple of rats, and I drove a few miles away because mice I know have a 2 mile radius, so you have to drop them off like at least 2 miles away so they can't find their way home.
Wow, 2 miles. That's wild.
Yeah,
That's
it,
crazy.
it is. It's
Huh.
really crazy.
So
So
you drove them?
yeah, I tried to get as far away from actual people's homes or farms as I could. Well, like you go far away, you're like, oh good, there's no one around, and then you release the rat, and then you look over there and there's a house like right there. And I just, duck my head and run away. Um and mice, I mean, I caught so okay. So this is how we have a shed an Amish built shed that we used as our first camp, I guess you'd call it here, and threw an addition on it a year or so later, so Andrew and I didn't kill each other. Uh,
Mhm.
and I decided, well, we need a barn. Obviously, we got animals, so I built a barn just off the side of the house, and just dropped a few posts, and I used the slab wood from local Amish mills. So it's like you cut off the round edges, so that you can make the boards for milling, and it's free. You can just go pick it up, and it's been real nice siding. I could talk about an epic fail with that too in a minute. Um, but yeah, so I put it up and I was real proud of myself, and I had a nice little barn, got our goats in there, got our chickens in there, and the mice moved in. We were doing deep composting with hay and straw in the barn. Mice loved it, and they came in, and then they didn't stay in the barn. They moved right into the house because the barn is right next to the house, and proceeded to make like a whole city in our ceiling. They just tunneled through all of our rigid foam insulation in the ceiling. And we used to sleep upstairs. We have a sleeping loft upstairs. No more. You cannot, like, it's much better now, but for a couple of years, I would say, I almost lost my mind, like trying to sleep, because you just wake up and it just be scratch, scratch, scratch,
Wow.
scratch all night long. And then sometimes there'd be like crashes, like, what are you even crashing? Like there's like this much space, up there. It's not like there's no attic. It's just threw some insulation up to stay warm. And they just, yeah, they moved in bad. So finally we got a tiny little live trap about yay big, and used that to catch mice. And we borrowed that from a friend of ours who had had good luck catching mice in his place with it. The same soft heart sensibilities. And yeah, and so I think I dropped them off in different spots. And then I realized like one of the spots I was dropping the mice off was probably like just straight into the mouths of snakes. It was like a wet area. And I thought, like, well, I don't want to, just feed them to the snakes. And so I took them a little farther up the road, and there's a nice little bush. Like I honestly don't know what it was, some kind of holly looking bush. And I thought, man, they could make a nice little home here, or a city, or under the bush city. And so that's where they all went. And there was a house across the street. So I zoom up early in the morning, drop them off and run away as fast as possible. And I don't know, like they haven't complained yet. They haven't, chased me down or thrown,
Wow.
thrown golf balls at me yet. So, but we got rid of them
They're gone.
for the most. I don't hear them scratching anymore. I might have just blocked it out. It's very true.
Right.
Yeah, and we have a lot of cats too.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, they catch some of them, and eat some of them. The chickens even catch them sometimes. Like it's fun watching the chickens catch frogs and mice. Yeah, but there were so many. Like we probably would need like 45 cats to keep control of all those mice.
Wow.
Yeah. And another thing the mice did. So for our seedlings, like we have a little greenhouse, like I don't know, 8 by 12, something like that. And so I always put all my little seedlings in there and I get real excited. I start them inside and we've got a little plant light and, pretty much every year. I haven't started any this year because I'm afraid of the mice. But yeah, so we get, it gets to be good enough weather. We can move them outside, close the greenhouse at night, keeps them fine. So we did that. I had tons of beautiful seedlings, peppers, tomatoes, tons of flowers, all kinds of fun things. I was trying to grow herbs, medicinals, and they just kept disappearing, like just gone. Even the pepper seedlings, and they would just munch right at the stem. And so I would get up and like go check, open the greenhouse, go, and then just like lose it because a whole tray of seedlings was just completely gone, or else they dig them up and like eat the seeds, like cucumbers, zucchini, like anything like that. They just dug them up and ate them. And so I tried covering them with God, I had some like extra greenhouse plastic laying around from the farm I worked at, and I would like cover it up, tuck it under, try to like put things around it to weight it down. And it worked for a while, but they'd crawl under, they'd find a way or chew through, they find a way. They got in, they ate everything. And so eventually we got this big restaurant rack, like these metal racks that you see in restaurant shelving. And we loaded them all up on that and put them in the back of our car at night, close the car.
Oh,
That was the only way we could keep them off.
wow. That's what a chore.
Yeah. So now I'm like, we protected as many trees as we could with the tree tubes that we had available. Like these, because we planted like 80 fruit trees and bushes this fall. And just like feeling the whip cracking of the weather, we got a blessing from God, honestly, like that we had weather as good as we did, as late as we had it, because we were so busy. And all of our own planting got put off to help our clients get their stuff planted. And so we protected as many trees as we could, but the tree tubes we have are plastic. And so I'm not sure. I'm hoping that the rodents don't chew through the tubes. And some of the trees aren't protected at all. And so I'm just like, I'm really, really hoping that like I'm praying every day that they are gonna be still not be girdled when the snow melts. And I didn't even know that mice like burrow under the snow. Like they just burrow through the snow and make little mouse tunnels and then go and like girdle trees.
Oh, wow.
It's horrible. So do you guys have any experience with this? Like, do you know how to deal with mice?
No,
I
I
I've
found a teeny one in my
rarely
woods.
had mice. I've had
Yeah.
voles, gophers, and rats. I've got a lot of experience with those three, but fortunately, I have not had mice as an issue like that. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, it does.
What do you do with like the voles and stuff?
Well, voles, habitat is one, right? So you want to try to avoid creating extra habitat for them if you can. Of course, a lot of that is building your soil and protecting, mulching your ground and whatnot. So in this garden behind me here in California that I left, there they have like seasonal vole issues. And they, every 5 years, 7 years, 10 years or whatever, it's weird, but like the whole area will just all of a sudden be inundated with extra voles. And one year, that happened to us. And it was so crazy that like you would get there in the morning and you could just see them like running around everywhere. And they were just getting out of control. And so you just had to, start setting traps. So we got where we were setting like 20 traps a day. Every day at the end of the day, you set the traps, right? And then you the next morning you check them all. And then, of course we had kids up there all day, so they weren't set during the day. And then we reset them every afternoon. We caught hundreds of voles. And it got to the point where like when I was up there, I would just like lift up a log or a potted plant or something, because I got like so overwhelmed and callous. I mean, they were taking over our food growing, and probably health hazard and everything else. So, and I would just take like a shovel and just start killing them. Just, oh, let me lift up this pot. I know there's some under there. Bam, 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 and
That's what my dad told us to do. He's like, that's how I handled it when I was out west.
And you just have to, I mean, it was terrible. I never thought, I hate killing things too. And that's what we did. And we got it under control. And eventually it was fine. So, having some voles and mice and rats and stuff in your system is, normal and natural, right? It just have to be in balance. And gophers, pocket gophers, like where I was here, they were, native and they had benefits, but they had to be kept in balance, because let's say a rattlesnake was the predator of the gopher. Well, the rattlesnakes aren't coming in our garden because the chickens and the kids and, the human activity. So it would, by definition, we're starting to change that balance of the system with our presence, right? Not in a good or bad way, just it is. And so then the rodent populations, start to, change because of that. So we had to, trap them. I mean, just the way it is. Pocket gophers are actually a lot easier to deal with. And rats are very difficult, but they're larger. So mice sounds like the worst. The voles were the worst one I've had to deal with because they're more like mouse size. So when you get them that, they're that little, they're harder to kind of manage, keep out, to fence out and whatnot. One of the important things with rodents is that they eat your chicken feed, right? So keeping your chicken feed up at night, or having like one of those, rodent proof things where the chicken like stands on and it opens up and they eat it and then it closes, and things like that. It's very, very important. When we built our new chicken coop, because we had rats in the old one, and we built the new one and it was like Fort Knox, as my friend always described. And it was hardware cloth everywhere. And sure, rats can find their way through there, but we had it so that the perimeter was clear. And so that if a rat did find its way through, we'd be able to tell where it got in and fix it. And never had any rats in there. It was great. We didn't even have to cover the food or anything. There was like no rats. Now, I guess maybe mice would have been more difficult. But yeah, traps.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Like getting the real little, hardware cloth, the tight gauge, and that's what I wanted to do around all of our new plantings, but we like just ran out of time, and I'm just like, everyone, please pray that our plantings are protected. I would appreciate it.
Send the Mother Earth jujus your way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. What other failures do you want to hear about?
What do you got?
Oh man. Okay, let's see.
You have a list?
I've got my list here. Okay, we're gonna see. Well, okay. Here's one that might be helpful for some people. So I have one chapter called Help, and it's working on this homestead. It's basically just been me and Andrew most of the time. My dad comes to visit usually for 2 or 3 months out of the year, which is awesome. He's like 74 and is a yoga instructor, and like just like kicks ass. Like,
Yeah.
like he works super hard and focuses and like helps us complete projects. And that is, I think, like the biggest lesson that we've had is taking on too many projects at once. And so there's unfinished projects everywhere, half finished, mostly finished, just started, materials, like just piles and piles of materials all over the place. And luckily my dad helped us clean up and organize the materials last time he was here. So that's, a big win. But we've done we've tried some different strategies to get some help, extra hands here on the property. And it's tough because a lot of our friends are farmers. And so they're really busy the same time we're really busy and exhausted and just wanting to hibernate like the same time we're exhausted and want to hibernate. So it's tough, and then the people who aren't farmers that we know, it's hard to sell them on what we're doing, really. Like we've got a composting toilet out here, which is just, it's a 5-gallon bucket that we put leaves in and, put in our humanure composting area. And, so people have to get used to that kind of accommodation, I would say, like coming out in the country, if you're going to spend a whole day out here. So I had some success years ago. I lived on a local organic farm and I asked them if I could pitch a teepee there and live in a teepee, rent one of their unused fields. And they said, go for it. So my ex-husband and I ended up finding a used teepee that was 32 feet in diameter. So it was enormous. Like it was huge. It was,
Awesome.
Big.
yeah, as big as our place we've got right now, basically. And so we got it, we took it down, we got some friends to help us transport the teepee. Responsible people who like basically always showed up when they said they were going to. We had like a history of, years long history with these folks. Like we knew they were going to show up. They followed through, right? So that's like lesson number one. Like don't ask people for help who like only sometimes show up or who you only talk to when they're hammered. So don't rely on those people to show up because you will be disappointed, most likely. And so we got the teepee, we got it to the farm, and we ended up, having a teepee raising party. And it was a unique enough thing, right? Like nobody around here had been in a teepee. I loved them from living out west and from just, playing memory teepee game when I was a little kid. And so they came out, to kind of check it out. And, a lot of people just kind of stood around like, this is interesting stuff, But people came and, some folks started really jumping in, lending a hand, but we needed a lot of people to raise the actual canvas that covered the teepee. It's exceptionally heavy sailcloth and there's a lot of it. And you wrap all of it back on a teepee pole, the lifting pole. And then when you get all your poles up, you have a bunch of people lift up the pole and then you unroll the canvas around the teepee. So we needed like 8 people to help us lift that pole. And I think what got them there is the promise, not only a teepee, but the promise of a barbecue and homebrew afterward. And we had made homebrew from the farms, blueberries, and lagered it. And it was like, people were excited, like, oh, we get to taste your homebrew, And so we waited until the teepee was up. Then we busted out the grill and the beer, and everybody had a great time. And it was a lot of fun. And then everybody went home, right? Well, fast forward to getting this place. And I remembered, like, oh, yes, beer gets people to help. So I put a post out on Facebook for our friends and said, hey, we're going to have a work party on this day. We really need help digging some holes. And we were digging trenches for our cistern, pipes, and, just moving materials and all kinds of heavy labor stuff. And some people showed up amazingly, and one guy jumped right in the trench and started digging. And he's just like, work is my stress relief, and he just like dug solid, for like hours. And we We brought him water and Gatorade, whatever, whatever he wanted. And the rest of the people that showed up stood around and drank beer the entire time. The entire time, right?
Oh,
So one of them was completely trashed by the end of the night, and we just like couldn't get him to leave. There was no way, like, he couldn't leave. He couldn't drive. So it was more of like us babysitting drunk people at that point. And I guess the lesson is like timing, right? Like you gotta have like dangle the carrot out here before, like you gotta get people to do some digging first and then give them the beer. So just file that one away for your future work parties, that drinking beer while you're working might sound fun. Sometimes it is, but it really slows things down a lot. It's for real though, like you get into this and you think like, oh, I'm gonna strew seeds about and they're gonna grow into beautiful flowers, and then your chickens come and eat all your seeds, and then the mice come and eat all the rest of them, and then the water comes rushing down the hill and washes the rest of them away.
So, there's a tendency in our field to try to glamorize homesteading and farming and growing and try to make it seem like it's super, super easy so that people will, want to do it, because we all feel it's very important that people grow their food and be involved with their food, participate in it. But it's unrealistic perspective, as we can all attest to, having done it. There are times where it's just it's a disaster. And I always try to think, when I'm having these issues, and don't get me wrong, I get very upset and cuss and scream and everything else sometimes, and get dejected. But I always think like, all right, I'd much rather be experiencing these problems than just not growing food at all and experiencing regular civilized society problems, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
It's like, this is part of it. It's just like when you're climbing up the mountain or whatever, or you're biking up the hill, you like, that hard part at the very top, that's what you're supposed to like, right? Even though it's hard and, oh, that sucks. Like, you have to sort of think about, actually, this is the kind of suck that I want. This is the kind of terrible problems that I want to be dealing with. And it helps me, at least, to think of it that way.
And I'm coming off of I literally thought I was gonna die. Like I was working with this slab wood. So this is my other homesteading fail. I was thinking of, I got the slab wood from the mill, and I was putting up siding with Andrew on a lean-to so we could store some of our stuff and have it nice and covered and have our nice country aesthetic, if you can call it that. And at the end of the day, I went to change and I felt something on my side, and it was really painful. And I looked at it and it looked like a little cluster of bites. And I was like, well, that's weird. Like, you'd think that would itch. I'm like, no matter, went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night and I couldn't like stretch my arm. Like, my muscles were hurting so bad. And then I felt my lymph nodes and they were enormous. And like it was really painful. I'm like, oh crap. So I get up, the next day, and I'm in a lot of pain. And so I think I was drinking willow bark tea because that stuff works better than most pain relievers that I've taken. And it helped. It helped quite a bit. And I had a thought, and I was like, well, if I don't make it, I'm gonna have a great final day. I went into YOLO mode, and just decided, like, take the dog for a walk, go hang out with the neighbors, like have a good old time. And meanwhile, like, this thing, it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And I thought I got bit by a brown recluse, and like all my flesh was gonna start coming off, and then they're gonna try to amputate like my organs and things. And so I was just like, well, we'll see. I'll go to urgent care tomorrow if I need to. So it got much worse. And the next morning I was alive, and I asked Andrew if he would take me to urgent care. And so we went, and I got there, and I had to stay outside, and they asked me, well, do you have a fever? are you nauseated? I was like, yes. Like, well, we have to give you a COVID test before you can come in. I'm like, no, I have an infection. And they're like, well, no, like those are COVID symptoms. And I'm like, I don't have COVID. Does this look like COVID? And I showed them, and it was just like this welted, like pus, like just like disgusting. And they look at it and they're like, okay, we decided that you don't need a COVID test. And they brought me in and looked at it, and I'm just terrified, because I read something about brown recluses years ago, and I just thought like, I'm gonna die. And that's like the only real poisonous thing we have around here. And so they look at it and they're like, oh yeah, this lady, she's real nice. She's like, we've seen that before. I saw one of these kind of recently. And she's like, what is it? It's like, I don't know. Let's give you some antibiotics. And they just like pumped me full of antibiotics for like just huge doses for like 3 weeks. And they're like, I'm like, would this treat a brown recluse bite? And she's like, well, I know it's not that because there's no necrosis around the bites. I said, okay, well, thank God. And I'm like, well, what do you guys think it is? And they said, I don't know, but things are changing out there. And so it's like the ominous, woo, but we're thinking it's some kind of spider that bit me like a bunch of times that was living in the slabwood pile. Because
Black Widow?
I don't know. She said it didn't look like a black widow bite either. So yeah, I thought maybe
it wasn't shingles. It was like a bite.
Yeah,
It
just a
wasn't
localized
little
cluster of
bite.
bites. Yeah,
Okay,
and
bites, not blisters.
yeah,
Okay.
it blistered up. It like welted. It's still there. Like I have a scar there right now. And like whenever I do hot yoga or start sweating a lot, like it just looks like toxins are still coming out of my body right there, like months and months later.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't know. Like I'm wondering if like wolf spiders have like got big enough now that their jaws are like big enough to bite people, which would be just terrifying. I don't know.
Crazy.
Out there. They're changing out there.
Things are
That's
changing.
crazy.
Oh.
But it's a mess, like it's totally unfinished. There's insulation exposed on the ceiling. There's like, clothes hanging from the ceiling. We just haven't finished things in an aesthetic way. But they come walking in, and her 7-year-old daughter says, is this where you live? And I'm like, yeah. What do you think? She's like, I should have brought my lavender spray. Yeah. So maybe we put the ass in aesthetics too.
This has been fun. It's been fun to connect and hear what you're doing, what you're still doing. I'm excited for your new little company and what you guys are doing. We're here to help you too, any way we can.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, you guys have always been amazing. Like I'm so blessed to know y'all, and I know that whatever we do individually, collectively going forward, it's going to be good for the planet and good for people. So yeah. So thank you for doing what you do.
Yay. We're on the same team.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, thanks, Katie.
Yes.
Thank you. And yeah, stay in touch.
Will do.
Okay.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. That was another great episode. And until next time, remember to grow your grass off. Ian, tell them what to do.
You know what to do. Like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell.